Welcome to PD on the Go, the podcast that delivers bite-sized learning on communication, collaboration, and facilitation skills for busy teacher leaders. Tune in while you're in the car, on your lunch break, or making copies, and get ready to level up your leadership skills. My name is Mary Beth Anderson, and I'm with the Office of Professional Learning in Fairfax County Public Schools, and today I'm joined by my two colleagues.
Hi, I'm Hallie Case.
I'm Sarah Phillips.
And today on our episode, we've been talking, last week we talked about self-led teams and how to distribute leadership. And so thinking about putting some structures in place for teams to be self-led, there are two things that we often share, we've talked a lot about on the podcast, and we share with teams when they come to us about norms and working agreements. And in our division, and I think probably across the country, those terms are often used interchangeably, but they really mean two different things. So we're going to dig into what are they and how can we leverage them to support teams in being self-led. So Hallie, let's first start with norms.
Yeah.
What are they and sort of how do they help a team function?
Yeah, so we think about norms, and I mean, you can take through from different resources for this, but the resource that we turn to define norms is from Adaptive Schools, which comes out of Thinking Collaborative. And what they describe are the 7 norms of collaboration. And these are like internal capabilities or habits, behaviors that everyone in a school would be striving to embody. It's like a cultural piece in the way that you communicate and work together, and it's not really specific to any one person. So the 7, and we've done this before on the podcast, and we could not name them all, but I have them written here so that we would get them. They all start with P. Pausing, paraphrasing, posing questions, putting ideas on the table, providing data, paying attention to self and others, and presuming positive intent. So those 7 characteristics and traits of communication are like the universal language for a school culture, and it helps people work well together when they are abiding by these norms. So that's how we would say in FCPS, we're thinking about norms in that way. But then Sarah, we would say working agreements are different. So how are working agreements different?
Working agreements are different, so these are team-specific. While norms were school-wide, we strive to have that as part of our culture. Working agreements are explicit behaviors that the team agrees to abide by in order for the team to function. So for example, last 2 weeks ago, we did our personality tests and our values activity. And so as a team, the 3 of us would maybe take the next step together and think about how do our values and how does our personality inform some of the work that we need to do. And so this would answer the logistical question of how will we prevent frustration when the work starts? An example could be for a team, we will enter our assessment data into the spreadsheet 24 hours before our Tuesday meetings. That's one example.
So it helps you to accomplish the work that you have to get done.
Yeah, so like it's specific to a team and maybe speaks to something that they need, right? So an agreement to like, we're going to start on time no matter what, even if not everybody's here, right? To try to encourage people to come.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like thinking about teacher leaders or a facilitator of this work and like how they might leverage norms or leverage working agreements during a meeting, maybe proactively and reactively. So I'm thinking about norms and how I might proactively support my team in being able to normalize those behaviors, right? So we could choose one as a team to focus on, especially if assessment data or we want to make decisions based on data. Maybe we're going to focus on providing data. Or maybe we notice we talk over each other. So we really want to prioritize paraphrasing and pausing. So a team could focus on one of those norms.
Yeah.
What else?
I think you could also, as the leader, or one of the leaders in the room. For norms, you could model it, right? So a pause sometimes is hard to model because you think if I pause too long, then other people are going to talk and then I'm not going to get to share my idea, right? So you could announce a pause. You could say like, you know what, let's all take a moment to pause and think about this idea before we start talking, right? So that could be a way to model it. Because I think to further differentiate them too, like thinking about how if I am not pausing, I'm jumping in right away, then I'm not adhering to that norm. But if I forget to input my data, then I've broken a working agreement. So those are two different things, and you would kind of approach them differently. Like me making sure I put my data in isn't necessarily going to model for the rest of the team that they need to get it done on time, right? So how would we, Sarah, facilitate to encourage working agreements?
I think a big key point is keeping them visible. And so many teams may put their working agreements at the top of their agenda and have it there. And it's important to revisit them. So not to bury them down at the bottom of a document, taking the time so that when a working agreement is broken, because that will happen, we're all human, that we can reference those working agreements as sort of that third point together and say, hey, this was a working agreement we had, and we all agreed that when they're broken, this is how we're going to address it. And so that conversation was proactive, and the reflection is continuous.
Yeah. I think that point you just made too is really important about like we created our working agreements and we have our 7 norms and we agreed as a team what we're going to do if one gets broken, right? Because we can presume positive intention. That's a thing. That's one of the norms. And we're human. It's okay to make mistakes. How are we going to handle it so that we are using those as a third point and people don't feel like they're being singled out? That's a really hard thing. It's hard as a teacher to hold your teammates accountable. So you have to decide together how you're going to do that. So it takes away some of the discomfort.
Yeah, because these are really important conversations to have together. Often team leaders get like PD around norms or PD around working agreements, and then they sort of have that understanding and knowledge. But if you don't share that with the rest of the team, then they can't uphold the norms. If I'm the only person that knows about the norms and I'm modeling them, they're not always going to be picked up on, which makes me think about one of the resources we have, which is a self-assessment that teams, individuals and teams can take together on the 7 norms of collaboration. So we will link that on our teacher leadership site, and also on our Atlas page, you can, or in Atlas, if you're an FCPS staff member, you can search teacher leadership and find that. You can also find it in a link in our bio on our Instagram page at FCPS_PD. So we'll link the self-assessment. And we also have an affinity protocol that we will share with you. It slides to help your team to create those working agreements together. So thank you for tuning in today, and we will hope you will join us next week for more PD on the Go.